Hello everyone, welcome back to Touch the Fire Twice. I'm Joshua, and I'm here today to do an in-depth sniff review of 3 new fragrances from PF Candle Company, part of their Soft Focus limited edition collection inspired by iconic California. If you're not familiar with PF Candle Co., go ahead and watch my video I did a couple months back, sort of a brand introduction and in-depth sniff review of 3 of their sort of classic scents from their core collection. Really enjoyed those. They were in sort of small, most votive size jars. And the collection we're reviewing today is a newly released this spring, back in April, limited collection that is a bit of a departure from their sort of traditional fragrance builds, as well as literally different jars and just a different vibes. It's a limited edition. They're calling it Soft Focus, both in the vibe, the notes, the names, and even literally the jars here are a frosted glass, literally to emit a soft glow when burning. So going to do my traditional in-depth sniff review. So they're packaged here. These are their 7.2 ounce 100% soy wax candles. So that is their traditional blend. And this is their traditional classic sized candle. The retail on these are $24 each, or if you get a 3-pack trio in this traditional full size, you'll pay $61 versus $72. So a decent deal there if you wanted to check these out. And I believe they have sort of a new customer discount, usually of a 10 or 15% if you wanted to check them out. So I ordered these on the PF Candle Co. website. They come in a really simple yet sturdy cardboard packaging with, listing exactly what you're getting, the candle name, and then the candle comes wrapped just in sort of your traditional packing paper with a little masking tape that has a stamp of PF Candle Co. on there. So that works really well for shipping. Totally appreciate that. Doesn't have to be anything overly fancy. And then here, as you see, it is your traditional single wick jar. I have burned all 3 of these scents, and it is 100% soy wax, so it does get a little bit sort of that mottled top there, but burns clean, burns well. For single wicks, sometimes single wicks are a little bit rough to get an even pool. These, because they're not a super wide diameter, tend to burn pretty solidly for me in my experience. I don't believe I had to do any sort of babying with these. You can see this one here has burned further. Also, a really clean burn as far as, really no soot. Doesn't burn overly hot, doesn't take forever to pull out. Just pretty healthy performance, which is great to see from any candle company, especially when you're getting into the single wick realm, which can be a little bit more difficult to get healthy burns. The way they describe this collection, Soft Focus, is 3 unique scents that spark recollections of ethereal days spent at iconic locations throughout our home state of California. Vivid yet hazy, wild, and free. Available for a limited time. They launched back in April. One thing I will say about these candles in general, PF Candle Co., is they're not going to always be the blow you out of the house. They're not the, triple fragranced, over the top, 12-15% fragrance oils. They say that their candles are meant to add a layer of scent to a room. They are smaller, so that's gonna happen naturally, but also they're not heavily fragranced with oils. You're gonna get more subtle, medium, sometimes stronger, but more in like the medium or subtle sense that you do smell them. They're not unscented by any means, but they're very gift-friendly, guest-friendly, and when you just want something that you catch the occasional whiff of in, a powder room or in a small office or a bedroom, something like that. They do have bigger candles as well. If you love one of their scents and want it in a bigger space, they do have larger vessels as well. So getting right into this, the first one is Citrus Daze, which they describe as endless citrus groves surrounded by green velveteen hills, lush botanical gardens, discovering fields of wild blooming poppies, botanical and citrus. So the way they describe this one, the family is botanical and citrus, and they consider this a strong throw. So on their website, they will always say, is it subtle, is it moderate, or is it strong? This one is considered strong. The primary notes they list are orange leaf, galbanum, California poppy, and grapefruit. Let's talk really quickly galbanum. You talked about that in other videos as well. So galbanum is a green plant with a little bit of a yellow flower toward the end. It is used, typically a gum resin from it. It is a Persian plant species, and it is used typically in very heavily green, somewhat resinous fragrances, but there is more to it. They say that it can be a bit of evergreen, some green bamboo, parsley, green apples, musk. Tends to be simply an intense green note. So I believe maybe Park Life from Boy Smells had galbanum in it. You see it pretty frequently when it's not quite herbal, because it's not a fresh green. It is sort of a resinous, intense green, but it is unmistakably a green note. Almost if you could make green leather or green amber. It is intense in that same sort of resinous way because it is a gum resin that is a product of that plant. So top note, galbanum, orange leaf, fresh squeezed citrus, lemongrass, California poppy, lilac, geranium leaf, fresh earth, olive leaf, peony, and amber. So wild mix of notes there. Smelling this, it certainly is citrus, and it's interesting because it is not quite citrus blossom, but not your typical zesty kitchen citrus that you get. Maybe it is some juice in there. I would say for me, this is warm. I could see, you know, California is known for their citrus groves, and really this is if you're in the citrus grove, but there's a lot of earth around you. It's not, it is fresh, but it is not, again, kitchen fresh. It is a bit more authentically outdoors. The one thing I also want to call out in this that I think is so interesting is peony. I suppose peony is considered to be really like a sweeter, less peppery kind of rose. Really very fragrant, soft, uplifting, sometimes a little bit of citrus, a little bit of jasmine. I think maybe because of the little bit of citrus that sometimes peony has is probably why it's in here. I get citrus, I get the very botanical, almost peppery green. Maybe some of that lemongrass in there because it's sharp, almost sweet, but a little sharp. Those florals, you know, you wouldn't call out poppy necessarily, lilac on its own or the peony, but there is sort of a floral powder that you get from this. And also very much so, I would say there is sort of this amber. It's a soft amber. It doesn't overtake. It doesn't become too animalic or too dark, but it does add a depth, maybe along with some of that green olive leaf, the fresh earth. I wouldn't call it earthy or musty or dirty. It's not overly fresh, but as if you are walking through a citrus grove, but there's a lot of dried earth around you. Then going on to Canyon Hideaway, in the woody family, a moderate throw. The way they describe this one is winding drives with windows down, bohemian cabins tucked amongst California oaks, the aroma of sun-baked earth and chaparral, woody, smoky, warm, and resinous. So this is, I think they call this sort of like, you know, you're in a cabin in the mountains, and this is not necessarily spring or summery in some ways, but it is that dry, earthy, smoked, almost the tiniest bit mesquite to it, candle, but it's not overwhelming. Now the notes on this, the primary notes they list are smoked juniper, leather, ginger root, and clove leaf. So you're getting, you know, juniper, very notable scent, some leather, but not overly heavy on the leather because they're not throwing a million things at you with the leather on top of it. You know, there's no tobacco in there, anything, or suede or heavy musks. Ginger root, which is going to add a bit of freshness, and clove leaf, which I get more of true clove versus the clove leaf, but certainly there is a bit of that kind of spiciness dancing in there with some of the leather and the juniper. Now, the full notes on this one: red cedar, smoked juniper, amber, leather, ginger root, sandalwood, patchouli, and clove leaf. I get the sandalwood, the patchouli, again, kind of the green patchouli, but still earthy and intense. And the clove, that depth of the clove bud, I feel more than the leaf, but hard to say. Playing with amber and the smoked woods sounds like it could be very, very heavy, but they really work at PF Candle Co. to balance things out and make them not be overly intense, even when it's an intense fragrance family like this. Now, one thing I didn't know going into this was what is chaparral, and so that is considered dry land, typically in, you know, mountainous areas like or desert areas like California, with dense shrubby evergreens. So it's pretty dry land, can get moist in the winters, but it is dry land covered in dense shrubby evergreens, which makes sense when you're talking about cedar, which I love cedar. When you're talking about juniper, that is an evergreen. And boy, this is really nice. This feels evening, tucked away. Again, a canyon hideaway, canyon cabin hideaway. You've got a bit of that smoked woods, but it's really, for a smoked wood, it is not, think of charcoal woods from Nest, that's dark, heavy, delicious, wonderful, but it is dark evening. This is, you know, a hazy post-sunset dusk in the canyon, in some cabin somewhere, where there is maybe a leather chair in there, but you have the trees around you. Maybe you just had a small campfire mixing with the freshness of some of the other things around. It's a really nice, you know, you think of your firesides, you think of your summer bonfires, you think of any sort of smoky, woodsy scent, and it's in that family for sure, but a little bit of freshness from maybe the clove leaf. The patchouli is a green leaf where you get the patchouli from, so there's a bit of freshness from that. The sandalwood is there, but it just balances really nicely with the cedar, the juniper, and the sandalwood. None of them are overly, they don't choke you out like sometimes. This is not a choke you out candle. It's warm. So this is probably my favorite from the bunch, just because it is a really pretty interpretation of a smoked wood scent. And then finally, we move on to Electric Surf, which they describe as the moon's reflection on crashing waves, balmy evenings on the beach, a crackling bonfire, the scent of jasmine dancing in the air, ozonic, marine, fresh, and smoky. So they really play with, they're not going to give you just your typical, ozonic scent with a little bit of driftwood in there. They're going to make it both marine, fresh, but also literally smoky. Now, the primary notes in this one are crashing waves, coastal jasmine, beach bonfires, and patchouli. Overall, full notes, we've got marine air, kelp, sea minerals, coastal jasmine, cannabis, ocean salt, bonfire smoke. So the smoke, not necessarily all of the wood, but just the smoke from it, right? There's a key difference there. Crushed shells, tonka, and patchouli. Now, tonka, of course, is very similar to sort of a vanilla, but it's going to be a little bit more sensual, a little bit more warm, a bit more earthy, not the sweetness of a vanilla floral, but a bit earthier, but still kind of that warmth. Leans towards, it could get earthy, it could almost remind you of sort of a musky, it brings depth. It's often primarily the base note in scents, but it does have a little hint of a vanilla-like sweetness to it. I will say right off the bat, this is my least favorite of the three. Certainly, I would say heavy on the marine air, the sea minerals, the ocean salt for sure, which in theory I really like, because I like the idea of minerals and salt and really authentic things. I think of like the LAFCO marine candle, which is a beautiful interpretation of sort of, an ocean shoreline, marine life area, aquatic. This one, there's something in here and I don't know what it is. Could be the cannabis. I'm not sure what the crushed shells are supposed to smell like exactly, but I like earthy. It's not earthy. There's something sharp in this one that I could only describe sort of, it's a bit like a cleaner, almost like the way that Windex, it just kind of like is very sharp and hits your nose in just like a very sharp way, mixed with kind of like a granny scent, like Granny's house after she Windexed, which sounds terrible. And many people love this. So this is, again, your nose is different than my nose. It could be a scent memory that I'm attaching to this because scent memory is so strong with our olfactory memory. But something in this just is a little bit sharp, a little bit cleaner-esque to me, and off-putting, to be entirely honest. I like the idea of this one. I like the notes. The granny could be maybe that jasmine. Maybe I don't like how it plays with the patchouli, or maybe the smoke that's used in this. Again, the kelp, doesn't really have much of a scent. It doesn't smell like seaweed, or it doesn't smell like dirty ocean. They say ozonic, the marine air. Sometimes that can be a little bit sharp when you think of your oceanside candles, but this is more sharp the way that sometimes a really strong botanical is, or a really sharp citrus can be, which there's not really citrus of any kind listed in here. So I'm not sure where it comes from. There is a sweetness to it. I could see many people liking this potentially more than Canyon Hideaway. Like Citrus Daze and Electric Surf are more similar, I would say, to each other because they do feel more traditionally, let's call it California surf. You're talking more ocean, whereas Canyon Hideaway is somewhere, hours from the shoreline in the mountains. So Electric Surf, again, I burned it once or twice. It is quite strong. This is the strongest of the three for me. But again, there's just something in there that is just not agreeing with my nose. Might need to be in a different time, different place. I do think it's still worth trying within the trio because it is very unique and it may be one you love. But for me, not the winner here. Again, love Canyon Hideaway for that mildly smoky, the juniper. I always love juniper. That it's that dry desert, but you've still got those evergreens. So you've got some woods in there, and a little bit going on in the freshness with, say, the ginger root and the patchouli leaf. And that back to that Citrus Daze. I could see Citrus Daze being the most sort of like guest-friendly crowd pleaser, in that it definitely has a solid, fresh citrus to it, weighed, in a good way, down with some of that resinous, heavy green botanicals and some florals that are shining through in the background there. So really interesting collection. Again, still a big fan of PF Chemical, even though the Electric Surf is not for me. But I love the idea of a really cohesive collection. That's something that some of the mainstream brands really don't do a good enough job of really having a focus of, hey, we want to build a vision, a cohesive grouping of scents that are going to really tell the story of a place or a time or an event or a season. And PF Canico is kind of playing around with that now, and I'm just a big fan of having that really good intention behind building a blends and then matching the marketing to how they're building those blends. So if you have not checked those out, I definitely recommend them. If you're gonna just get one, I would say go for Citrus Daze if you want that really unique citrus, or go for Canyon Hideaway if you want just that soft, beautiful, woody desert. And Electric Surf if you want to try something a little bit out there, but has certainly an ozonic sweetness to it, certainly heavy on sort of your minerals and your saltiness as well. Let me know what you think if you've purchased these, and if you have any other PF Canico scents that you would recommend, I'd be happy to hear about that. And until next time, take care.